Welcome to the world of Legacy of the King. Join our hero on an epic journey in the Dragon Queen series. Legacy of the King is a tale of power, courage, and fantasy, where ancient prophecies, mythical creatures, and heroic deeds come together to weave an unforgettable story of a king's rise to greatness. The Legacy of the King promises an epic adventure that will captivate listeners and leave them yearning for more in the Dragon Queen series. Chapter 1. The Adoption. The sun was rising in the east, a great ball of fire. Light blossomed in all directions, filling the sky with the breath of another day. It would be a hot day in England, but not just another day. Today, the Earth Queen has died. To most, this doesn't mean much. Some don't even know of such a person. But to those who do know the royal family, it means a great battle to come. For when the Queen dies, it is written in the tablet of old, she will return to wreak havoc and destruction, trying to take over the world in the name of evil. She must be slain in combat or imprisoned by the Chosen One and his disciples, by means set forth by the Chosen One's inner spirit. In the ages gone by, humans have forgotten or just lost most of their magical abilities. The most important one is the ability to morph into their spirit animal. Though she presents as a gentle and loving queen, her spirit animal could be anything from a butterfly to a bear. So, the spirit animal picked by the Queen's inner spirit is the form she will come back as. With her power and personality, though, we expect she may return as a dragon or another beast, strong and dominant. Once identified, the Chosen One is selected by the king based on this type of spirit animal. Only once in history has the Chosen One failed to destroy or capture the Queen. In 406 AD, it is said that the Chosen One lost, in single combat, to the Queen. His death sent the world into medieval times, otherwise known as the Dark Ages, a time filled with greed, evil, and death for hundreds of years, until it was taken back by the wolf, the Chosen One's spirit animal of another time. Today, however, there was a problem, a major problem. I am the Chosen One's soon-to-be adopted father. Let me tell you about our journey. It was April 27th, in the year 1959, when the new Chosen One was born. His mother was said to be high in the British government and decided to put the boy up for adoption. He was sent to a young maiden who lived in Lower London to stay until the adoption could be concluded. Mr. Pendragon was the attorney who was contacted to make these arrangements. Selin and I were ecstatic when we received the call from Mr. Pendragon's secretary about the adoption, and we were ready to leave Oregon for England as soon as it was possible. I spent the next 45 minutes setting up transportation to Portland and flights to England. Selin, I scheduled a flight for tomorrow at 8 a.m., I shouted. I also called Fitz and he said he would bring us to Portland. We have to leave around 4 a.m. to be there in enough time to catch the flight. Okay, Selin said. Selin gleamed and smiled with such brightness as she packed our bags. We had been waiting for this day with such eagerness as Selin was barren and could not have children. 4 o'clock came fast, but we were ready, and Fitz was right on time. As we left the drive, I thought, we're off to merry old England to pick up our boy. The excitement was thick and viscous in our minds, rigid in our steps. Life was singing us a happy song today, and we were loving the tune with fervent appreciation, as expected of parents who desired the simple wants of all men, to bring up the children of this world in their own image. Granted, he was not of my own blood, but the prospect was too much for us to pass up. We could have gone through the local and less burdensome measures to adopt. But as soon as Selin heard it was the son of a matron, she jumped at the opportunity, saying we should get the best child possible. I could not be sure about the idea of success and royalty being passed down to a child's future, but I heard it was possible. The same way you would have the children of famous and successful people become successful themselves. We were happy and full of life as we drove down the dark back roads from Dant to Portland. It would be miles before we hit a road with lights. Though driving through the woods, seeing the stars shine through the treetops and feeling the brisk air rush in through the window cracks all made for a joyous ride. We would cross the Warm Springs Indian Reservation and take Highway 26 into Portland, straight to the airport. Arriving, we checked our luggage and was a little surprised to see very few people there. No bustling airport today, it seemed. So we checked in at the Scandavian air counter to get our tickets. From there, we walked down the halls, passing all the closed stores that would surely be bustling in just a few hours. We boarded our first flight, and as we took our seats, we felt packed in like sardines. The takeoff was quick, though, and before we knew it, we were airborne, looking down at the clouds' castles and watching the sunrise on the horizon. I laid my head back and fell into slumber, It wasn't very comfortable, but soon we were landing in Chicago. We would change to a much larger plane here, and even though we were still packed in, it was more like eggs than sardines. We would be on this plane all the way to London with one stop in Copenhagen, Denmark, so we made ourselves as comfortable as possible. Several hours later, we landed in Copenhagen. With a quick change of staff and restocking of food and drinks, we were on our way to England. The flight was short as the stewards rushed to give drinks and clean up before we were descending and getting ready to land in London. Relieved and somewhat tired, we collected our baggage and went out to await our ride. The instructions were to wait outside the baggage claim and hold a hand straight out in front of us. I thought this was really dumb, but it was mere seconds, and we were picked up by a limousine which brought us directly to our hotel, the Savoy. The driver gave us an envelope with instructions for the next day and had the bellboys escort us up to our room. This treatment, from the limousine to the strict instructions, were a little odd in my book, but they insisted on it. The last thing I wanted was to complain about was the excellent service and ruin our chance at getting our child. Selin, she did not say much, but she was beaming with all the possibilities of what would happen tomorrow. I just wanted to get this over with. Keeping myself quiet about everything was a part of the plan. It would work itself out anyway, I was sure. Naturally, as night crept deeper on our stay in the hotel, it was nerve-wracking. We were just hanging in anticipation to see him. I faked sleep more or less, with my eyes closed, but mind fervent in thought. I would open an eye and peek at Selin. She could not sleep. She just looked out the window of the hotel, watching the activities of London pass by. I wondered, was she ready for this? Was I? I would like to believe that I was, but we were about to be parents. I had never raised a child, but was delighted I would get a chance to, and elated it was going to be a boy. I dreamed of teaching him how to play baseball and playing outside with him. So many wonderful things came to mind. I smiled, just thinking of it. Knowing I would get the chance to help raise this child into a man was a magnificent sensation. It would be a rewarding feeling and an avid joy that cannot be explained. I breathed out evenly as my heart swelled to the idea of it all. Resting as much as I could, so my wits would be in good shape for the meeting with our attorney, Mr. Pendragon. The day we would adopt our son, the day we had waited for so long. We were up, dressed, and at the front entrance at 8 o'clock sharp, as we were instructed and as promised. We were picked up by the limousine and chauffeured to the home of our attorney. As we drove up the beautifully landscaped driveway, I could see a large Celtic-built house with shale shingles, tall windows, and a view of the mountains on one side and the ocean on the other. It was very lavish. We had never dreamed it would be so formal. We were just two blue-collar workers from a small town in Oregon, and my gray two-piece suit and Selin's simple flowered dress was a little out of style for this place. Still, I would hold my head high, for I knew I was as good as any man, and Selin was the only one I ever needed to prove myself to. Still, it would be great to be rich and live the high life. I never was one to chase money, though I did not mind if it improved living just a little bit. Still, to be able to live like this is a far step from Dant, Oregon. We stopped in front of a beautifully landscaped walkway with flowers and shrubs all trimmed, ending in a stunning redwood door with the family crest of honor carved into it. Our chauffeur came around the limo and opened the car door with a "Madam, Sir," and with a hand gesture, he directed us to the entrance. The smell of the flowers as we walked up to the door was profound and relaxing, the smell wavering in the air, assaulting our senses. It drew us in. I could imagine just sitting in the garden would take away all the troubles of the day. When we reached the door, I noticed the door handle was in the shape of a dragon's head. It was a beautiful door handle, strong and boldly detailed. I pointed it out to Selin and said, "They say it's all in the details." She smirked at me slightly and opened the door. As we enter, I notice the room is very simply decorated, but it still has that upscale charm and elegance. There were a couple of hand-painted landscape pictures on the walls, 2 modest English chairs, and a table with a vase full of flowers. A hand-carved sign posted on the wall behind the large redwood desk read, "Mr. D. Pendragon Family Law." The name on the desk read, "Margaret Thatch." At once, a young woman appeared from a room to our left. She was blonde, with dark eyes, a pleasing figure, and a very stern look, wearing a slimming suit and skirt with knee-high leather boots to accompany it. I immediately thought, this must be Margaret. "Welcome. How may I help you?" she asked with a very pronounced English accent. "We are Mr. and Mrs. Wyvern, and we are here to see Mr. Pendragon about an adoption," I told her. "Mr. Pendragon is in the library. Please follow me," She spoke with the utmost grace, and I was sure she was the one who had contacted us about the adoption. "Thank you," I replied, and settled in behind my wife and Margaret to walk down the hall. Continuing through the series of halls, I noted each was decorated with pictures of a man playing soccer. Was this Mr. Pendragon, or it could be his son? Upon entering the library, we were presented to Mr. Pendragon. "Mr. and Mrs. Wyvern, sir," Margaret stated in a very firm but respectful voice. "Oh, yes, please come in and be seated. Thank you, Margaret," responded Mr. Pendragon. I was right. Mr. Pendragon was a tall man with blondish hair and well-built for a man in his mid-50s. The pictures didn't look like him. So it must have been his son, or maybe he is just a fan of the man in the pictures. I looked up at him. "Your accent, is it a mixture of English and Scottish dialect?" "Yes, it is. You are very perceptive, Mr. Wyvern," he answered with a tilted brow. "It is delightful to listen to," said Selin. I thought he was a little offended by the comment. I did not want it to be a point of contention, so I pushed it no further. In looking around, I noticed there were books everywhere, on shelves, tables, and even strewn around on the floor. Not a mess, mind you. More like a roadmap going from one book to another in search of some law or some matter that needed more explanation. "I am so glad you could come at such short notice, but on to more respective matters." At this, his voice changed from the joyful, happy-to-meet-you tone to a professional, matter-of-fact tone. "We have a young child that was born to a matron of the High Council. As I'm sure you know, she cannot raise a child in her position. Well, maybe you don't know being American and all. Anyway, she has contacted me and asked for me to make all the arrangements for the adoption, with the utmost confidence in this matter, of course." "Of course," I said, nodding my head in approval. "As you know, the child is a boy, 3 weeks old, and has been given a clean bill of health to travel when you're ready. The paperwork is ready for your signatures. So, if you would be so kind as to step over here, you can read through them and go ahead and use my pen to sign them when you're done. If there are any questions, please don't hesitate to ask." With haste, the papers were dispensed before me. I read through most of it and signed each line as he pointed at them. When we finished, Mr. Pendragon looked through each one to make sure it was done to his satisfaction. A curt nod to show his approval, he slid those papers into a plastic jacket and dropped it on top of his briefcase. "Good. We will meet in the Parliament Family Court for the acceptance of terms in just about an hour from now." He detailed each step as we continued to nod our approval. "You will be escorted into court by my secretary, and she will make sure you have been briefed on how the court process is conducted. You will only be asked one question. Are you up to the task of adoption? Your answer?" "Yes, sir," we replied in avid unison. "Then you are ready. Margaret, will you please escort Mr. and Mrs. Wyvern to Parliament? Oh, and please explain the court process to them, will you?" "Yes, sir. Mr. and Mrs. Wyvern, please follow me," she asked. "We are ready, Mr. Pendragon. We will meet you in court and be on our way directly." I extended my hand in conclusion and respect. We shook hands, and I departed the library, following Margaret and Selin through the house and to the limousine. Again, we were chauffeured, this time to the courthouse. It wasn't a long ride, but it was a very interesting one as Margaret pointed out all the touristy spots. There on the left is Big Ben. It tolls on the hour and on the half hour. Here on the right is Buckingham Palace, and there is the British Museum. The last place she pointed out was Parliament. It was a huge brownstone building with turn-of-the-century architecture. The limousine pulled up to the curb and the chauffeur came around and let us out. As we walked into the building, Margaret continued to tell us the procedures of the court. It was long and complex, but to put it simply, stay quiet until you are addressed, and then answer with a short, concise answer. As we entered the courtroom, I saw a stairway precisely in the middle of the room leading up to a platform directly in front of the judges. This is where we would have to stand. 3 judges, all wearing wigs and surrounded by paperwork and aides running errands, and correspondence from table to table. When our case was called, Margaret ushered us up the stairs and told us to face the judges. Our attorney, Mr. Pendragon, now stood on a lower platform to our right, also with a wig on. He addressed the court with such language as to explain our case. The middle judge, Sir Malcolm Dragor, an older gentleman with a soft face but stern voice, asked us, "Mr. and Mrs. Wyvern, are you sure that you are up to the task of raising this child?" To which we answered in agreement, "Yes, Sir Dragor." Seconds after our answer was given, his gavel came down hard on the beautifully carved redwood bench where he sat. Bang, bang, bang! With a loud voice that rang throughout the hall, Sir Dragor presented us with his congratulations on the acceptance of our new child. Once we were dismissed, we were led down the stairs, where we met the vicar who handed Selin the child wrapped in a small red and blue blanket, with a rather large black case having all the things we were expected to need for our trip home. His eyes were a dazzling hue of colors that settled in a reminiscent black that was like looking into a deep dark pool of water. You could delve into it, and it would lead you to the pure mind of this child. He drifted his hands, cooing in response to touch. Legs jumped absently to the rhythm of his thrusting arms. Selin brought his head closer, and he froze as if shocked to meet his mother for the first time. Trying to roll, one leg shot out as if it was a salute. A quick close of his eyes, he burst out laughing. All of them, even the vicar, could not help smiling. Then Margaret took hold of us again. As she escorted us out, I turned to reflect on the whole ordeal, just so I could remember every detail. The court was very strict in its customs, from the wigs the judges wore, the presentation of the petitioners to all in attendance, and the signing of the documents with pen and ink. It was all very impressive, though I think the best part was the presentation of the child to us, the new parents, and the blessing given by the vicar. Out in the hallway, she presented us again to Mr. Pendragon. "Mr. and Mrs. Wyvern, sir." Then she turned and stepped away. "Thank you, Margaret," I whispered. Margaret looked at us with a wide smile and gave a nod. Selin smiled back, taking her eyes away from the baby for only a second. Mr. Pendragon congratulated us and very tactfully reminded us about the confidentiality of the situation. "Please remember, in your travels and your home, to keep the ancestry of your child confidential." We both gave him our solemn promise we would. Again, Margaret took us in hand and escorted us through the labyrinth to the outside. Then we were whisked away into the limo and driven to the airport. Margaret explained, "Your plane is being held for your arrival." It was? That was good. Too good, I thought. Who could do such a thing? Here I thought it was almost impossible to request a plane to wait on you. Planes are notorious for staying on time with their schedules. Even if one was late, it was for a really important reason. I could assume a safety reason would be a good one. But personal treatment such as waiting on a family of 3 was highly unlikely. At least it should be. I could not believe he could pull that off. But who was I kidding? I was already traveling inside a limousine. So, we left as soon as we arrived at the airport and had boarded our plane. I was looking out the window and thought it was such a pretty day. I do wish we could have stayed for a bit, though. The way we were treated was definitely high class. The city of London left behind, now only memories remain. Heading up into the cloudy castles in the sky, the feeling was somber. It was quiet. The only noise was the whispers of passengers nearby and the hum of the engines as we climbed. As I looked at my wife and our son, I couldn't help thinking about why it was so important that the child's heritage be kept so secret. I realized that the matron was of a high position, but the people of our community wouldn't even know what a matron was, as well as what her position in the hierarchy of the British government would be. It was all so secretive, and now that I had time to reflect on the whole aspect of what happened, I became a little worried. This, of course, went away within a few hours of being stuck in a metal tube with a crying baby, the rush of flight attendants, and the awakening or boredom of an overcrowded plane. We spent most of the flight playing with the baby. Selin tried to know him inside and out. I thought to himself, she will be a good mother. But these thoughts got shattered quickly when the baby started crying again. We did everything to get him to stop. Nothing seemed to work. A young woman 2 rows in front of us was watching while we tried to figure out the problem, still with no luck, mind you. Then she got up and came to our rescue. "Hi, are you new parents?" she asked. "Yes, and we can't figure out why he is crying," Selin answered with tears starting to flow. "Don't cry. Everything will be all right. My mother told me babies cry for 3 reasons. 1, they're hungry. 2, they're wet or dirty. And 3, they're sick or hurting. She looks to be fine, so either she is hungry or has a wet or dirty diaper." She smiled. "We just fed her, so..." "Yes, she must need to be changed then. Do you need any help?" Again with that smile. "Yes, would you sit with me and talk for a while?" Selin asked with pleading eyes. "Yes, I will. I am Larissa, by the way." "Michael and Selin," I pointed at each of us. I then got out of my seat and motioned for her to sit down, and I went to another empty seat and dozed off. It must have been an hour or 2 before they were done. Selin woke me asking me to come back to my seat. She told me what they discussed, all she had learned, and within minutes we were again playing with the baby. After several hours, we heard the familiar sound, bing, and the pilot came on the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, if you look out the right side of the aircraft, you will see the Statue of Liberty, as we get ready to make our descent into LaGuardia International. For those of you going on to other destinations, there will be assistance at the gate to point you in the right direction." This is the point when we realized we had arrived back into the United States. The excitement was short-lived, though. We were told the plane would be delayed for about an hour, but we could not disembark. Nevertheless, we were guaranteed to arrive on time. Our arrival into Oregon airspace was a welcome relief. I could see the mountains where we lived, but the area was blocked out by the large white cloud castles in the sky. Then the noise of the passengers and the airplane was again interrupted with the voice of the captain. "Bink. Welcome to Portland, Oregon, where the temperature is 68 degrees at 4:25 Pacific time. We will begin our descent in just a few minutes." The seatbelt sign went on. The entire plane came alive, and everyone was scrambling to get ready for the landing and the departure. Our descent into the Portland International Airport was fraught with anticipation. Our neighbors, Fitz and Everin, were to meet us and drive us home. Fitz and Everin were friends of ours who moved to Dant years ago, and both worked at the hydroelectric plant on the reservation. When we first met, it seemed as if we were long-lost friends. Everin was actually the one to introduce the idea of adoption to Selin. They would be ecstatic to see our new baby boy and hear of our journey. However, the trek from the gate to the baggage claim was to be an adventure in and of itself. We were the last ones off the plane. Selin didn't want anything to happen to the baby and all the hustle and bustle of everyone departing the aircraft. But once our feet felt solid ground, the feeling of euphoria overcame us, and the stress of the journey just slid off our shoulders. Of course, it didn't last long. The walk from the plane to the baggage claim was gruesome. People bumping and banging into us in their hurry to catch their next flights. The signs leading us to the baggage claim couldn't have been more difficult to follow, and the distance from our flight to baggage claim seemed immense. More than a few escalators, a tram, and several stairs later we arrived. With a shriek, hands waving, and lots of people running towards us, we were welcomed by our friends. Fitz and Everin, with their 3 children in tow, greeted us with hugs and handshakes. They assisted us with finding our baggage. The kids were overjoyed to see the baby. Everin told us they had spent the day in Portland, seeing the sights and letting the children enjoy themselves. Then the conversation turned to the baby, and she wanted to hear all about the trip and the baby. She had hundreds of questions, all being shot out like a machine gun, not even waiting until they were answered. It would be, at least, a 3-hour drive home. There would be plenty of time to answer them all, I was sure. The destination was Dant, Oregon, which lies along the west bank of the Deschutes River on the northern border of Warm Springs Indian Reservation. It is a small town with no main roads or stop signs. Just a few people who worked on the reservation and one weird dude who just wanted to get away from the rat race. It is a good place, desolate, but you could depend on your neighbors, and the crime rate just didn't exist. It was a good place to raise a child, especially one that you weren't supposed to talk about. Everin asked so many questions on the way back, but one question was very interesting since we had not even discussed it yet. "Selin," she said, "what did you name him?" It caught us by surprise, as I had not even thought about it. The paperwork from the court called him Sean Scott St. John, although we were told we could change it to whatever we wanted when we applied for the birth certificate. I looked at Selin, and together we just stared at each other, not really knowing what to say. I'm not sure yet, Everin. We have not even discussed it. Everything has been about us getting to know him and learning how to take care of him. We haven't thought about it," replied Selin. It probably seemed fitting to let him have the name he was born with. I had no problem calling him Sean or Scott. But to name a child is to lay on that child's future. To say, "I am your parent." It was not something I wanted someone else to have, even though he was not, by blood, my child. I was selfish. I wanted to give this boy a piece of the life me and Selin could offer. But what name would fit best? It was clear that this child was born into a rich family. Now he was going to live a normal life, as we would say. A name to reflect his past would be nice. Fancy English names. Well, there are names like George, James, Peter. Those were old names. Such names were given to kings and other powerful men. Wait, being born of a matron meant he was royalty, right? I could be wrong. It was not like I knew much about royalty lines in England, but a good name would be Drake. It should mean royalty. I would have to check on that, but for now it really sounded good in my mind, Drake. We had reached the outskirts of town when I turned to everyone and shouted, "Drake!" Selin was a little startled with the way I said it, but I liked big reveals. We both laughed. "I want to name him Drake." The name just felt right. I looked at Selin and said, Drake, is that okay? Selin just smiled and nodded her approval. Thank you for joining us in the world of Legacy of the King, where ancient prophecies and epic battles unfold. If you enjoyed this journey, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more legendary adventures. Stay tuned for the next chapter in Legacy of the King. Until then, may your quests be filled with courage and honor.